Hello and welcome to LedgerCast. My name's Brian Krogsgaard. I am here, as per usual, with my good friend and co-host, Josh Olsowich. Hey, Josh.
Consummate professional, Brian. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do.
Hey, it is my pleasure, and it's my pleasure to be with you here today. I think the people are a little nervous, Josh. I think they're a little nervous. Bitcoin had some down days. Like, how dare it have down days? I think people might have gotten a little over-levered, a little overexcited. But all is well.
Did you get margin called?
I did not get margin called because you can't get margin called when you're not on margin. Lawrence asked us in the chat, if people are watching this on video, he asked, why the hat lately, Ledge? The answer for why the hat lately is because of lack of showers lately.
Nice.
I wear hats when I when I haven't showered. So normally I'll shower up before we record, but sometimes I don't. The priority is get the show out for the people.
That's right.
You know what else the people need? The people
lower ETH fees.
They need lower ETH fees so that they can be more successful when they're trading on Matcha, who's our partner for this and all shows. Ledgerstatus.com/Matcha is a great place to trade on a DEX. And guess what? The fees are actually down right now a little bit. And I've made some moves on Matcha. You can do it too at ledgerstatus.com/Matcha. Get access to all the Ethereum-based tokens, the hottest in DeFi, even the ones that are drawn down 50% or more. Do you want to buy in a bull market when they've drawn down or when they're hyperextended? I don't know. You tell me. But you can do it at ledgerstatus.com/Matcha. We're thankful for them being a partner for LedgerCast. Great friends of the show. It's the best way to trade. They pool liquidity from all the places. And you know what? There's more places than ever to pull that liquidity from, Josh. Just this week, I was adding to my Rook bag as I do, averaging down as it goes down. Rook got added to Bancor, and I noticed that actually that was where Matcha pulled some of the purchase from, not only from Uniswap, but also from Bancor, because Matcha will pull it from wherever the liquidity is best. That's why I love it. I do not have to know to go to Uniswap or SushiSwap or Bancor. I don't have to approve my tokens on every single one of them. I do it all from Matcha. It aggregates it all. It makes it great. Thanks to Matcha.
Yeah, two things. One, only losers average losers, Brian. How dare you?
I know. But here's the thing. I'm not averaging a loser. I'm re-adding to a winner when it
right,
goes
of
down.
course. Of course. Of course. That Suzu podcast you did earlier this week, must listen. Everybody needs to listen to that. We said that in the pre-show already, but the guy's just the font of knowledge.
That was one of his tips, was like, if you have something that's never running, or just consistently not running, then you don't want to average down on that and by selling your winners. He had a lot of good stuff. It was a great episode.
Yeah, you don't want to rotate into a losing position, basically.
Now, what I'm saying I'm doing, I think it's different because I'm adding to a winning position when it draws down, but it's still a winning position. I still find it to be a winner. So basically, I'm back to full size. Is really all I did.
Right. The second thing I'll say is, I noticed the Bancor. So the enzyme stuff, we can talk about the token sets and the enzyme stuff, but the enzyme fund, or whatever you want to call it, portfolio I trade through TechMe Capital, also routed through Bancor this week twice, which was that for the first time that happened. Bancor, the assets under management, the TVL, hit some level as well this week.
Yeah.
Bancor oddly is like doing stuff.
Yeah, my buddy Crypto Messiah is a huge proponent of their stuff because of the way they've established liquidity. It's really interesting. I'm not sure what it means for the Bancor network token or whatever, but they offer single-sided liquidity. So I could go stake Rook over there, and then they actually create synthetic Bancor to be the other side of liquidity. And then over 100 days, you start to prevent yourself from having impermanent loss as it kind of self-insures. So it's interesting stuff that's too gigabrain for me. We've got to get Messy on here maybe to talk about it. But yeah,
I still don't understand impermanent loss. Like I get the concept. I get like you can get wrecked if you're holding over high periods of volatility. But like trying to game theory that all out is so difficult
yeah,
when like I don't know. There's just too many variables. That's why I
yeah.
just don't worry about it.
Well, I think the future of all of this will be to where impermanent loss will be pulled out. Like the technology will advance to a degree to where you choose to hold both assets and like subject yourself to the cross volatility relationship that creates impermanent loss, but you'll have the option to be single sided in all the major pooling tools. In my opinion, long term, that's what will happen, which I look forward to because I don't like to be exposed to both. You know, I don't want to be like in an ETH USD pool. I want to be in freaking whatever I'm owning, you know?
Yeah, I mean the stablecoin pools make the most sense to me, like on paper, even though the yields are probably lower than other stuff.
Yeah, because it's just simply swapping from like DAI to USDC or something.
Right. It seems like the lowest risk for impermanent loss, but
Yeah. So we got a good bit of stuff to talk about this week. One is like what felt like a blow off top in ETH fees. I mean, it was extraordinarily expensive.
I mean, we hope so. You hope so. I hope so, certainly.
Yeah. And there's also more talk about the Ethereum improvement proposal 1559, which we've talked about a lot. Sue said, I prompted Sue for this, but he said that he thought this would be kind of a key element of volatility for Ethereum. And his podcast co-host on Uncommon Core, Hasu, he wrote an article essentially game theorizing like what the best outcome is, and he talks about why miners should end up just supporting it because it'll be the best for miners in the long run. And so that's a good article on Deribit Insights that we can share in the chat. But you gotta, just like we did in 2017 with the Bcash fork and BSV and all that stuff, there were points of volatility. It doesn't make you bearish, but it does establish itself on the chart. Like you can go back and point at it for being a cause of volatility. This probably will be similar for Ethereum, and it's worth knowing about, worth following the story, understanding what it is. Yeah, so keep up to date with that. We'll link it. I don't think it'll have any problems going through in the end, but might offer us a dip at some point.
Well, you have to be informed when it's the literal entire issue of ETH right now. You know, if it does or doesn't affect fees, like that's an important thing to know about, right? That's a market event that everyone's going to be watching. So even if you don't agree with Hasu or CZ, CZSZ, does he go by SZ? I feel like if I were him, I would just for the lulz. But even if you don't agree with these people, like you can game theory alternatives and think about it for yourself. You know, I don't personally think EIP 1559 is going to affect fees at all. It's like I said this,
but it'll affect the monetary components of Ethereum.
Yeah, but it's like we're picking out drapes on a house that's burning. You know, it's like who cares if we think this is going to burn stuff? If fees are still going to be infinity, it's like, guys, like the issue isn't let's pump my bag because we're going to change the monetary policy. The issue is nobody can use the world computer because fees are infinity, right? I mean, they hit over 1,000 Gwei or something the other day. Like
Gwei?
Gwei, I don't know how to say that, but the fees were so high that on ETH gas station, they just were like zeroed out. I'd never seen that before. It was just like bugged. It didn't know what to do. It was just, that's how bad it was.
Yeah, I think on one trade, I spent like 1/3 of an ETH on a transaction, which was not good. But it was an important transaction, so I did it anyway.
So yeah, we need layer 2. Everyone's focused on EIP 1559, which is great. You know, it's long-term, blah, blah, blah. But the important thing right now, the relevant thing right now isn't burning ETH for fees or whatever, you know, some elasticity, volatility, and fees. The point is like fees are way too high. It's not scaling. It's not working right now. It's a tragedy of the commons. And if EIP 1559 doesn't do anything to address that, it's like we're wasting our political capital trying to get this through, you know, with miners or who's, you know, we being
I was
everybody.
Like, did you just yourself for Ethereum?
Yeah, I pulled a Hasu, you know, he's a controversial figure, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, alluded to, but you know, he said some takes that I've definitely disagreed with. But anyway, yeah, we as in the people using Ethereum, it's just hard to use Ethereum. That's why BSC is doing so well, regardless of how like centralized and controversial CZ is in regards to that. Even the SAM coins are doing well. Everything that's not ETH is doing well because the fees are so much lower, right?
This is so similar to the 2017 Bitcoin argument. It's
Yeah, it
stunning.
is. It is.
However, I will say 1559 is one component, and it'll come in the summer. So the reason I brought this up is it seems more and more likely it'll be in the Berlin fork in the summer, prior to ETH 2.0 full launch or whatever you want to call it.
London or Berlin?
I don't know.
Whatever.
Some city.
Yeah.
The other element that I wanted to bring up is what it's doing is this is pushing layer 2 very quickly on the Ethereum network. And there's elements of layer 2 that are out there. So there's some that are basically like a side chain, like XDAI and stake stuff. Some protocols are already using that because it's very easy to do. But there's some centralization issues there, I think. The one that seems the most popular, and Synthetics is already down this route, is Optimism. And then Vitalik said in an interview not too long ago that he thinks the real move and goalpost will be towards like ZK rollups and stuff. And one of the things Sue hinted at in our interview was that's kind of the next frontier of their investments is layer 2 investments. I think that was some big alpha that he shared. Not that we have access to invest in layer 2 stuff easily, but the layer 2 side of things is going to be a huge part for Ethereum scaling. I think it'll do it faster than skeptics believe and making ETH more usable quicker than previously assumed, particularly if like Uniswap and SushiSwap lead the way with that, then they will pull massive amounts of trading and liquidity to layer 2, which will open up the rest of the layer 1 network much more because you have the chart, right, of like where ETH gas is actually used.
Yeah, I was just going to pull that up too in a different way. But yeah, I mean, we saw that with SegWit, right? It's like if everybody cleans up their act, Coinbase, all the exchanges. I thought about this the other day when I was thinking about masks. It's like wearing masks for COVID is enforced at the commerce level, like going into grocery stores, going to Starbucks. And that's where these like SegWit stuff and all these governance issues, like the enforcement happens at the exchange level. It's like we might want it on the protocol, it might get passed, miners might approve it, but until the big spenders like actually adopt this stuff, which is in their best interest, because it attracts users, fees get lower, blah blah blah. Then it happens, right? Like Binance still had was way behind the curve on the SegWit stuff. Binance is still a massive gas spender. If I look at, it's a little less today. I don't know what the difference is between gas guzzlers and gas spenders, but a lot of these are exchanges, Binance wallets, whatever, blah blah blah. If Binance has a competing chain, it's in their best interest to say, look how crappy Ethereum is, come over here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to accuse them of this because I don't know, but like I've seen some people speculate that Binance is not exactly rushing to help out the ETH network, to put it lightly.
Right.
In 2017, Roger Ver was like pretty much openly spamming the Bitcoin network for his own interests. And
Right.
I don't think, I don't want to claim Binance is doing this or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to say. But the monetary incentives to get people on BSC would encourage that type of behavior on the Ethereum network. And I also just want to say, I don't even blame them. It's up to the protocol to be defensible to these attacks. The beauty of crypto, and like Bitcoin in 2017, is it ended up being strengthened by small protocol improvements that made big impacts, that made it more defensible to people who are not playing nicely. And that makes a blockchain much stronger in the long term.
Yeah, it's just anti-fragility. It needs to be attacked. Fees need to be high. People need to be using the chain. But because then people start caring. They have skin in the game, right?
Yeah. Yep. So what are we looking at here?
Well,
Bitcoin.
this
Or
is unconfirmed ETH transactions are still insanely high. Gas is still relatively insanely high. Gas total fees. This was as of a few days ago. It was like 1.25 billion between the mining rewards and the fees
yeah, that's
for the
insane.
month. That's for the month, but it actually hit 50 million
On a,
in fees on ETH on the 23rd.
yeah. Well, I felt it. I think I felt.
Yeah,
I
I
felt
think
like I
everybody
paid
did.
1 million in fees. Not really, but
Yeah,
yeah. Like if you add up your fees for the day, and it's like, did I really just spend like $1,000 transacting? It's like, yes, you did. And wow, it hurts. It hurts. And
well,
when
and
you're
this is
losing money on top of it, it really hurts.
yeah, it's like yeah. I mean, you and I are talking about how it hurts. Mark Cuban's talking about how it hurts. I can't imagine the people who are just like
Yeah.
in trapped in certain ways just because the fees are more than they have on some decks or something.
Yep. There are some ways to mitigate this. You can make limit orders, but for your limit order to fill, it has to be profitable for the miner to do it, or like for the arbitrageur to fill the order. So it's still not like super easy. You might go unfilled often, but if you set it and then you forget it, maybe it'll get filled in a period where the fees slow down enough to where it becomes profitable for the person doing the arbitrage. So there's ways around it, but not easy ones. The best way is to move to layer two, and improve things that way. So yeah, and that's going to happen. We're going to see. I think we're going to see a huge rollout to layer two over the next 2 months.
I mean, it has to happen, or ETH is just dead. You know. So that steak dinner, do you think it's coming for me or you?
Man, it's not looking good for me. I
we
feel like I'm about to lose a lot of money, and then I got to fly to DC to buy you steak dinner. We'll give people a reminder. Like, what's the terms of this?
so we said what by end of March, above or below 2600,
2,500.
2500. Okay, sure. At this point,
Sure.
it looks
Who
pretty far away.
cares?
But I didn't get margin called on any long positions. The big thing was the pitchforks really are what were telling
You
me what
keep
to do,
saying people got
especially ETH.
margin called. You're making it sound like I got
Because
margin called.
no, because there's all this conversation around like you're calling the top. This is why you bearish. Should I be buying here? All this sort of stuff. It's like just guys, just zoom out. Look at where we are. Look at where we were. Look at the percentages. We talked about this last week. If something is up 1,000% in the past 2 weeks, okay, it's probably going to retrace. Um, I'm looking at the pitchfork still. I talk about pitchforks because people hate them so much. Just like this anti-hero antagonistic relationship. But ETH is still free floating above the pitchfork. I like it. I like ETH sub 1,000.
I
Come at me.
I see your stupid pitchfork, and I raise you 3-day Chad chart all time high retest. Uh, I'm just saying,
Yeah, I mean, I sold.
perfect retest, perfect retest, all normal market behavior. Get off my lawn.
I sold most of my ETH at 1726. I was nervous about it at 19 and didn't pull the trigger and should have, but now
Yeah.
I'm
Well, you
I'm
properly
glad
you properly
I'm
got rid of some on the way down.
that was spot. But I'm just saying, like, use intuition. Don't be nervous about this stuff. If you're down here, ask yourself, was I leveraged? What was my mentality going into this past couple days? Was I paying attention to the calendar? Was I paying attention to seasonality? Was I paying attention to macro stuff, which we'll talk about?
Yeah.
Um, all this stuff is important to just be aware of. You don't have to get information overload, but you have to be aware of it.
So I think if I lose the bet, it's not because Ethereum goes below 1,000. I think if I lose the bet, it's because Ethereum stays below 2,000. If that makes sense. Like when I showed the 3-day chart because it supports my bias, because there's a fast moving average that the drop essentially came down to the moving average, which was right at the prior all time high, supports my bias. But if you go to the weekly, like we're way off the 20-week moving average for Ethereum still, which is below 1,000. So I kind of think the prior all-time high will be defended, 1,300, but it could form some kind of larger weekly consolidation, and it could just take too much time for me to win the bet. Same when I look at the daily. It's respecting the level perfectly. Literally, we consolidated at 1350, the prior all-time high, grinded up, and then elevator down, but now we've found support right back at that all-time high. So we could bounce, and I could win the bet. Like, we could just super bounce, mega bull, off Ethereum goes. In all likelihood, though, it'll probably, start to catch resistance between 1750 and 1800, and it'll end up in some kind of longer term consolidation that causes me to lose the bet, and then like April 1st it'll go above, it'll break out or something like that. A time for the majors to cool down, let the moving averages catch up, stuff like that is a very likely scenario now, since we didn't just like crack up out of the grinding. You didn't go from grinding up to parabolic up. You went from grinding up to push down, consolidate. It makes it to where it's going to be a lot harder for me to win the bet, but I'm not counting myself out quite yet. And I'm not going to be bearish. I'm not going to be bearish on crypto in this macro environment. You will not find it from me, sir.
Yeah, I agree. Dips are for buying, 100%. There's a lot to like about all this, right? There's
Right.
W double bottom forming on each. There's tons of bull divs on any way you look at it. Look at MACD, look at RSI on the 4-hour. I like that it, like you said, bounced on the previous all-time high. All this looks good for ETH in a vacuum. It's just the fees. It's all about the fees. If the world computer can't act as a world computer, then what's the point? Like that. What got ETH here was everybody buying it for other stuff, right? Just like the ICOs era of 2017, 2016. So if what's getting ETH here can't happen, it's going to be a lot harder for ETH to just keep going. That's just, to me, that's just common sense. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a rabbit will be pulled out of the hat. All will be well. I choose to be an optimist. How about that?
I'm optimistic that someone's going to figure something out, but I'm a realist, right?
I think a relatively small number of players have a large amount of control over ETH fees, right? So Uniswap, SushiSwap, Binance.
I mean, if the dexes were smart, they'd enter some sort of like a consortium agreement or something where they're like, we're going to do this, we're going to do X if Y happens, or something. Somebody needs to do something. I know it's all like decentralized, and we love being not controlled by anybody, but there needs to be something going on.
All the stuff I've heard about Uniswap 3.0, I think it'll have scaling solutions in it, and I think Uniswap 3.0 is imminent. And as Darzix just said, if Uniswap gets on L2, it's over, and I agree.
But 1inch went to BSC, and I love that move because it just says, hurry up, ETH. You got the time, the clock is running out, right? Like 1inch can move to layer 2, it can move to BSC, it can move to Solana or whatever, Serum, whatever the flavor of the month coin is, it can do all that stuff quicker than ETH can scale, right? Is that a hot take?
No, it's like that's been a source of a lot of the other layer 1 moves is the rotation game. And that's fine. They can do that. Yep. It's perfectly legitimate. I wanted to ask you about the, we've been talking about this in context of Ethereum, but Bitcoin is doing the same thing. Like it topped at 57 and it went down to 44. Bitcoin doesn't have scaling issues, but it's down 24% off the top. Is that just a normal retest, or are there other things at play there? It's not fees.
We're crapping on Ethereum because I can. Another thing I meant to say is it's funny to see who comes out of the woodwork to like pump their bags or pump a competitor. Specifically, I'm thinking about Fluffy Pony who's like pumping BSC and like crapping all over ETH constantly. It's just funny to see the obvious bias of people who like hate Ethereum or don't like Ethereum and haven't liked Ethereum for a long time. I don't know. It's just funny. Do I think BTC is a retest or not? Yeah, I think all this stuff is just collectively being moved by the macro bond stuff, which maybe you can explain a little better to me than I just, it's just over my head as far as treasury yields, or whatever the hell's going on. Somebody mentioned in another chat, like anytime there's a move, it's like the market is falling apart. Like, why can't there just be a move that makes sense? It's like every little thing is like this massive blowout disaster. Like, what did yields hit? Like a big up move or something? I don't know. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so when yields go way up, um, it is like a signal for inflation expectations. The Fed is controlling the short term by the short end. So like the 3 month yield or whatever, that they can keep that low, but then the 30 year goes wide or goes high, and it creates a yield steepener trade. And it's essentially a signal that they believe that inflation is setting in, and it puts pressure on particularly growth stocks. So the growth versus value trade becomes really interesting. And the reason that it puts pressure on growth stocks is because as yields go up on the long end, on the 30 year, you can get yield off of that, and therefore growth stocks, which are setting expectations of profits far into the future versus profits now, well, the expectations have to be even greater because you can get such decent relative. It's still low. It's like it's 2.25. But it puts pressure on them because they are competing with that 30-year yield. And the 30-year yield is going up because it's expecting inflation to go up, but the Fed is controlling the short term, keeping those low, so it creates this spread between the near-term yield and the long-term yield, and it just puts pressure on the market broadly.
Even though it's like relatively small, like the move itself seemed relatively small, but
Yeah,
the
because
reaction seemed incredibly like over. It was an overreaction based on the total percentage, is what I
right,
gathered.
when you look at the 30-year as an example, this level that we're at now, like 2 to 2.5, was the floor considered like super low all the way back to 2013. And it broke down with COVID coming. Like when COVID came, it went from 2.25 to a low of like 0.83, even as a wick print, but really about 1.2 on the 30 year. So it's almost like a bearish retest, and not particularly worrying all by itself. It's more of like how it looks in a trend. What's interesting to me is now so many people are talking about it, I feel like it's just going to stop. So I think it's about time for the trend to be over because so many people are suddenly worried about it. That's just kind of my 2 cents on that, though.
Yeah, I just didn't understand everything. It's like everything's melting down all at once. Everything's a disaster. Everything's the worst thing that's ever happened. And it's like this little move in the market. We're feeling it in crypto. I mean, we'll talk about GBTC, I guess, but everybody's rotating out of stuff into other stuff, right? Like that's the bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah.
So GBTC premium was negative 6%, negative 7% today at some point, which is the grayscale ETF like thing.
Yeah, you made your first GBTC entry, right?
I did. I bought 50 shares. I feel like so official talking about shares. 50 GBTC shares. I'm a proud owner of GBTC today at 42.10 or something, whatever it was, 42.50, whatever my fill was. Yeah, because like if it's at a negative premium, to me, you're better off buying that, right? Than spot. If it's effectively a spot vehicle, it's not like traditional BTC, blah blah blah. We can have that separate conversation, but
Yeah, from a
if it
custody perspective, it's not like your keys and all that,
right, I don't want the maximalists to get all upset.
but
You're supporting Barry. What are you doing?
you're getting Bitcoin at a price you like, and you're getting it at a discount to premium on a product that typically carries a positive premium.
Yeah, and I'm not like I bought like what, $2,500 worth. Like it's
Yeah,
nothing, you know.
this is not a lot of money. It's just why not
Just
if you can throw a little
yeah,
at it.
yeah, for sure. Or throw a lot of money at it, whatever, you know. What's the worst that could happen? You know, that was my right. It goes to zero.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know. Yeah, I haven't checked ETH today, but I'm like guessing ETH's negative premium was negative or close to negative because it was zero for quite some time, relative to where it was. These premiums, by the way, were in the hundreds or two digits for a long time.
What was that?
So ETH and GBTC.
Oh yeah. They were really severe. Um,
So it's just worth knowing your options. You know, if you're connected to like TD Ameritrade or IB or any of those other brokers, it's also worth looking at like MSTR and Square and Tesla and like
yeah, I'd be a little scared of those because like MSTR relative to the Bitcoin holdings is still like it was still trading at a really large premium.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I'm not saying those are buys. I'm just saying like you should know that you have other ways to express a long trade other than like spot or futures or options. You could do like pseudo longs through MSTR or Square or some other company you think is going to buy BTC soon. You know, like stuff like that.
yeah,
There's
in
just other
the
things you can do.
chat, Mike Tyson said, "What's the GBTC premium? How do I find it?" If you just search GBTC under indicators on TradingView, there's a GBTC percent premium by FlibFlib. This is the one that I tend to use, and then you can customize these to your heart's content. So I like to go and slap it on off the histogram and do like an area chart, and then you can get a feel for the premium. So it's like below the flat line, so it's literally negative 3% right now, which is unheard of. I saw some people talking about game theory on this, that some of the people were using this arb trade as a way to retrieve yield for customers. Like I heard BlockFi might be doing this, and that it actually is going to really screw up their capacity to provide yield to their customers. So that was, to me, an interesting, I don't know what you call it.
Well, there's a big risk that if this goes severely negative, there's going to be a reaction on the spot prices of BTC because of the loans being carried out for GBTC. So they basically have to close their collateral
Yeah.
to pay for the negative premium, and that's the risk, right? So
Yeah.
there's not a non-zero risk that this can just like really screw things up in the short term in some way.
Yeah. So one of the, I guess that's the theory, is essentially it's like a squeeze on the people doing this trade.
Yeah.
Because especially if they're doing it on margin, which most of them are, right?
Yeah.
So if you're doing this at 10x and for the positive ARB, when it goes negative, you're losing money. And if it goes significantly negative, like you could have to roll out of that position and you could get beat up pretty good. Someone, I wish I could remember who it was on Twitter, but they referenced it as the reverse Melvin Capital, like the GME squeeze, it's the inverse of that.
Yeah, a long squeeze, basically.
Right. Which would be, I mean, that could have bearish implications for Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, of course. Somebody just sent me, Mr. Cat, thank you. The ETH grayscale premium is negative 5%, looks like.
Yeah, and
Negative 5.
I'm feeling that one personally because I rotated my GBTC at the very top, sold it all, sent most of it to cash, and had about a third of my portfolio. I'm sorry, sent most of it to ETH with a third of my portfolio in cash. We had the weekend dump on Monday. I was like, I'm deploying it. There's no premium. I'm bullish ETH, yada, yada. And then the premium has just kept going away. So it's like on down days, I'm down. On up days, I'm down. Doesn't feel good, man. Doesn't feel good.
Yeah, that's why, you have to disconnect yourself at certain points in time. At least that's how I don't know. I just ignore it. I have to. I can't be super hyper plugged into every single percentage move. You just have to realize that this stuff is super volatile, and if you're not on leverage, then you can't get margin called, right? Like you might be down 25, 50%, but you can't get margin called. And that's the important part of it.
My ETH BTC chart has so many lines on it. It's like you just see my hopium on here. It's like, look, it's support. And it just keeps going down. I know you consider this chart untradeable. Because it's down, I'm starting to enter your camp.
I mean, I want to know.
I'm just coping.
I want to know the percentage of people who trade ETH BTC on leverage successfully.
I don't know. I don't care about leverage. I care about where my assets. I care about where my assets. Like my basis the last 3 weeks should not have been ETH, despite wanting 0.055 as my magnet. It's made it almost as painful as possible on the reverse side of that. It's gone. It not only broke my like weekly level at 0.0365, it dipped well below the 20-week moving average at 0.0325, a low of 0.03, just under 0.03. So obviously, when it failed the weekly level, I should have waited it out, and I did not. So
it had a shot. It had a shot because it has an inverted head and shoulders setup, or inverted head and shoulders-esque setup.
The question is this failed? Is it over? Is this peak buying opportunity? I don't know.
It's below the 200-day moving average. It's basically below the VPVR support. I don't know. It looks super ugly. You know, I sold my ETH, like I said already. So, yeah, I didn't long ETH in the Enzyme fund either, because just looking at this ETH BTC chart, it looks very ugly. You know, it looks like this could actually go to like sub 0.26. You know, it could Eiffel Tower. It could Eiffel Tower itself.
Full. Gosh.
Back down.
Do you know my pain in this situation? Is this max pain? ETH just gets wrecked relative to Bitcoin.
I mean, ETH did it to itself. It wasn't prepared for the fee monstrosity that occurred. You know, DeFi led all of this. By the way, it pulled back pretty decently like last week, right?
Oh yeah, like Aave is kind of my favorite way to look at it because it went up so much. And
yeah,
you know, I had talked about Aave running the fibs. Running the fibs was a peak of 500. It went to it got all the way to 570, which is crazy, but really it didn't have a daily close over 525. Ended up being pretty clear distribution. I got back in Aave too quick, was right for a hot minute, and then became wrong. So now I'm like, and I don't know, I'm not bearish Aave. It retested the prior cluster before it melted up, but it's a challenge for me. Like, what do you do from here? I'm still bullish Aave. I'm still bullish DeFi. I'm still bullish Ethereum. But how does it act in comparison to BTC? Like, it's not a safety trade. It's not an obvious trade. It doesn't make it a wrong trade. It's just a harder trade.
Yeah, I mean, it looks, pulling up the Aave BTC chart, it's below the previous.
We were asked about Aave BTC.
Below the previous all-time high. I like looking at VPVR. I like looking at the 200-day moving average. I like looking at trend metrics like Pitchfork stuff as well.
I think the BTC version looks like an all-time high retest, which is what gives me other additional hopium. But it broke the high by so much over multiple weeks that a 3-week retest is kind of weird. Yeah, I mean, a weekly close below the prior high at 0.0067, that would be pretty bad in my mind.
I would like it more at the 200-day moving average.
Where is that?
Which is 0.5 or whatever that is, 0.05.
Yeah, but that's like a full breakout, or a full breakdown.
Yeah. That's like, if we want to get serious about where I'd want to be buying all of this stuff, it's at the 200-day moving average. I pulled up Link for a second because Link is approaching the 200-day moving average again. Historically, it's bounced on that, you know, every time it's had the opportunity. It's also at the median line of the Pitchfork again. So like, it's definitely getting to the place where I just want to keep adding to my position. Another thing, just sentiment wise, when I said a target of 60 by end of year, so many people are like, wow, you're the most bearish person on Link I've ever seen in my life. Like,
Wait, saying you
okay.
targeted $60 was bearish?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
A lot of these are just bots or just like people who are, in the community or whatever. But it's just funny to see sentiment analysis. Or when I posted that 26K pitchfork for BTC, the comments on that tweet it's incredible. It's incredible. Like people get so upset when they don't realize like there's a possibility of losing a ton of money. Basically, that's always a possibility. But anyway, yeah. So I like the 200 period moving average. If just like scanning all this stuff collectively, DeFi wise, that's where I would feel safest. Because look at this Aave BTC chart. Even it hasn't really held below the 200-day moving average for any period of time.
It also
So
depends on like what are your actual perspectives. Like you look at sushi, and it's like, yeah, you could say this is a dip, but rational people wouldn't look at this and think of it as a dip, not in the long term sense. What happens though is you look at it relative to your all time high value, and you get spoiled, you know. But like sushi looks insanely healthy, honestly.
sushi right now looks like it did in December, early January, on the BTC chart anyway.
Yeah, just like healthy consolidation before a move up.
Yeah, it looks fine. And if DEXs are going to survive, it's hard to bet against them. It really is.
Yeah, I think to summarize, like my thesis on DeFi remains whether it like kicks Bitcoin's butt on a relative basis. I have a hard time saying that it will, but I am still very bullish on DeFi, so I still have exposure on DeFi. Am I all in on DeFi? No. I want to have plenty of liquidity to trade, majors, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and go to USD if I need to, like if some major trends break down. But on the whole, I feel okay. I feel the market is still healthy. A drawdown like this is not the worst thing in the world.
Right. And if you're not buying dips in a bull market, I mean, what are you even doing here, right? That's like you got to take your shot. If you're buying at highs or you're not, where are you going to buy, right? Like the very bottom mean reversion of the 2600 target on BTC, the sub 1,000 target on ETH. Those are possible, but less likely, right? So at some point you got to step in and say, okay, I'm just going to start buying here. It's like, yeah, you're going to be down for a couple days initially. But I think we'll talk about March seasonality a little bit, I guess. If you look at how BTC has performed in March, it's historically been slightly negative or very negative, even excluding last year. So I wouldn't expect much even in the next 4 weeks. But Q2, which I've talked about for years, has always been the best quarter for BTC, for alts. I said in my DeFi video this week, just revisit all this stuff in April. Start accumulating. This is what I'm going to be doing personally. Accumulate through March. Hope for a bad month so that Q2 can be much better. That's where my head is at.
Yeah. And from a seasonality perspective, in terms of why March tends to be negative, it's because on the whole, crypto is typically a tax positive event, meaning people have capital gains that then they have to protect against to pay their taxes in April. So it tends to produce outflows in March, right? That's the narrative we're giving it, at least.
I mean, you could apply that narrative, sure.
It's a very reasonable narrative.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense because we've all done it. Anybody who's paid taxes has probably had to sell crypto to pay taxes. I certainly did in 2018, and that wasn't fun. But where if you're not holding a bunch of cash, where are you going to get that money to pay for your taxes?
Yeah, and
you have to sell.
Yeah, I mean, we all got to pay taxes. Just the guarantees in life, right? Death and taxes.
Death, taxes, and Doge going back to 10 sats.
Oh yeah, we got the Doge question. All right, I saw that Elon Musk is under investigation by the SEC for pumping Doge. Did you see this?
Yeah, I don't know what they can
do. It's a commodity.
Do to that. But they already don't like the guy, so they're going to try to do whatever they can.
Yeah, it's back to 109 sats. I don't like the chart.
Doge?
Yeah.
No. No, anything above, you don't buy Doge at 100 sats. You buy Doge at 15 sats, 20 sats, you know?
Yeah. Certainly below 25, 30 sats. You
So,
don't buy Doge above 100 sats. It doesn't go well.
and on the USD chart, what is the 200-day moving average on the USD chart? It's got to be lower. Yeah, it's at a penny. It's at 117 is the 200-day moving average. So that's where I'd buy it. You know, even if this goes to 35, I can't say like buying here makes sense. Sorry, just not for me.
The Doge all-time weekly USD chart is one of the more beautiful things that I've ever seen. Like, the TA told you to buy Doge, the breakout above 0.0038 or so. Oops. So, yeah, if it was like, it just had this 2018 to 2020 consolidation, 200-week moving average, 20-week consolidation and crossover, and then bam. And it's like almost the exact same fractal as it had between 2014 and 2017, which is nuts to me. Like, it looks so similar.
It reminds me of Ripple too, on how the breakout, the consolidation took forever, and the breakout was like super quick, super overextended, and it's probably just going to bleed for the next 2 years.
Well, what I was going to say is you could apply. I don't have my fib extension's a little goofy, but I don't know what percent drawdown this is. Let me see. The first pump in May 2017, which was the early part of the bull market, it came down about 85% off of that, and then pumped again on the like January exit pump of all crypto. So off the top this time, if it followed that fractal, it would put us back at 0.012 cents or 0.012. Okay, so that's 1.2 cents for Doge, which is the first consolidation that it had before it like really got the Elon treatment over a couple of days. So I think you could punt on Doge at 1.2 cents. And if it pumps off of that, that's the end of the bull market. That's the equivalent of the January 2018 exit pumps. So if I was playing this, I think I would play it like that.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. There's no way I'm buying Doge up here. Sorry.
Yeah.
Even though like trend wise, it looks like it has a chance on the 2-hour, like the 4-hour cloud.
But I think you're going to underperform almost any other altcoin with real fundamentals.
Oh, for sure.
Less bag holders. This created many, many bag holders on these pumps, and now they will lag the market until there's some kind of exit pump. Maybe that's when it goes to a quarter or something.
It's still like, it's not that far away from its local high. It's only like 3 cents down.
I just don't want to waste my time in Doge. I think it's going to have a massive drawdown, and then it'll have another pump at the end of this entire bull market, and maybe that's what we'll use as our opportunity to recognize the end of the market.
The exit liquidity for anybody holding.
Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
So we have Coinbase announcing their S1 or whatever. Kraken's talking about 10 billion valuation. Coinbase 100 billion valuation. How do you think that's going to affect anything in this year? Because that should be happening, right?
We saw some big moves on DEX tokens and exchange coins as the Coinbase news heated up. So like BNB last week, we were talking about that massive move. Uni had a massive weekend move. I feel like a lot of that has been priced into the exchange tokens and DEX tokens, but I don't know. Maybe there's more from that. I certainly think the Coinbase IPO will dominate the market for a bit, and I also tend to think even if there's some kind of initial pump up, it'll just turn into a distribution for all those early shareholders that want to take profit.
I mean, Brian's set to be a 20 billionaire.
Yeah.
20 billionaire.
Yeah.
$20 billion.
It's going to go for 100 billion, right? Market cap.
Yeah, I'm sure like a lot of that's vested, or maybe it isn't at this point. I don't know how that works behind the scenes, but for sure they're going to be selling. Like, wouldn't you be? Again, this is like the Mount Gox BTC conversation or any waterfall situation. Like, if you win the lottery, you're not going to hold on to the ticket, right? You're going to cash it in. This is what people do. Even if you believe in Coinbase like has a future, um, people are going to spend the money.
They're going to
That's
take it
just
off
how
the
it is.
table because they're now very wealthy, and
Right?
there's
It's
a
liquid.
rotation. There's a rotation of chairs, a rotation of shares from early holders, early believers who are now at 1,000x's, and it goes into the hands of retail. It doesn't mean it can't pump. Like, look at every other IPO. Like, something can seem expensive, like a Square or a Shopify or a Facebook, and after some early volatility, some early rotation, it can establish itself on the market and find a reason to go higher. But you're going to have rotation from early holders.
Yeah, I think it's good. The timing, I think, is going to be super interesting and important for Coinbase, and how like the health of the crypto market is in the near term. Even like within like the Robinhood thing is also coming this year, right? The Robinhood IPO.
Uh, yeah, I didn't even think about that one. Are they delaying it because of their issues?
I don't know. I don't know. So that's all just like weird stuff on the back burner to think about, how all this is going to affect
Yeah.
crypto markets.
Corn Cobb says, why is the Coinbase IPO bullish for other centralized exchange coins? I think it just pulls the relative valuations up. So if you look at here's Coinbase's revenue, or here's their trading volume, here's their fee volume, here's their total net revenue, and then you start extrapolating that to total volume on other exchanges. Like, let's take Kraken, for example. They're raising money potentially at a $10 billion valuation. Well, if they are at 20% of Coinbase's total revenue, if you assume similar fee extraction, then if Coinbase is worth 100 billion and Kraken's worth 10 billion, then they're 50% too cheap, right? And they should be worth 20 billion. If that, like, you can play those ratios. So the way the public market values Coinbase will end up having an effect on all other exchanges, whether equity or token equity. Because what happens with most of the other exchanges like Binance or FTX and stuff is their equity is kind of presumed in their token valuation. So people will start to extrapolate those values.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's all just about like normalizing how much what is worth.
Yeah, you'll say like, oh, well, I thought BNB was expensive at $100, but now I look at their actual volume and Coinbase is worth 100 billion, so BNB should be worth 500 or something. It's just narratives that people are going to use.
Which makes it even more clear that FTT and BNB stuff like that are definitely securities.
Yeah,
People
they're
are
a relative security for those platforms, but I don't know, man.
right.
We're not lawyers. Um, let's see. What other stuff do you have, Josh?
The Bitwise Bitwise 10 AUM is up to 1 billion, I think. Maybe it's, I don't know if it's the Bitwise 10 is AUM is 1 billion, or the Bitwise family is up to 1 billion. I think the general takeaway is like people are still buying. The Saylor thing just happened as well. He bought a billion more when BTC. He's talking about buying more BTC. Yeah, so it's like, even if you're bearish, just zoom out, look at what everybody else is doing. Like, it's hard to be a multi-month bear when all these funds are buying, people are looking to get in still. Funds are like figuring out how they can get in which ways they can express that trade, as far as being long or being holding some custody of something. Like, all this stuff is still happening, is going to happen over the next 6 to 12 months still. So that's why I remain bullish on BTC for sure.
Yeah. The Bitwise premium, is it still significant?
I don't know. I haven't actually looked at, what is the ticker? Is it BitW?
Yeah, BitW. Um, and then let's see here. Somebody asked about the FTX futures for Coinbase. I think those have been actually pretty accurate. The secondary market for Coinbase futures. Yeah, that says it's trading at 103. Do you know what the NAV is?
That was 43.
Okay, so yeah, the BitW is still trading at 100% plus premium, but that's because no BitW has been unlocked. It's a 12-month unlock, and it hasn't been around for 12 months yet. So
Yeah.
that's going to be the case for that. We're getting a lot of questions about DeFi coins that we'll cover in the post show. Layer one questions still: are we bullish on stuff like Solana or Polkadot?
I think it's all junk, Brian. Sorry. It's going to do great in the near term because ETH is floundering, but
Yeah, I think there's always a balance in any of these.
The other danger
They're
is the
worth
cult of
trading.
personality too. The cult of personality is like Elon, Sam, CZ, all these people. It doesn't matter what you think about these people. Just the cult of personality is super dangerous because you can get wrapped up in everything Sam lists is amazing. I'm going to buy it. It's going to last forever. The 1,000-year bull market, right?
Well, they can also work really well.
Yeah, I'm not like saying it's all like junk crap that's never going to work. It's doing well in price because it does things that other things don't do.
The cult of personality does cut both ways, and it can work for years and years, and it could work forever. It could be the greatest alpha you ever have is to follow a smart person like Sam all the way to Valhalla. Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah. Yeah.
To the Citadel.
I'm seeing more and more of that lately. That I'm noticing it. Just like, people need to reel it in a little bit, I think, for sure.
Yeah, it can go overboard sometimes. But it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, they are probably better than you at analyzing the fundamental opportunities in something.
Of course, yeah.
And I'm not bearish on Solana or Polkadot. I have to trade the charts on them. The valuations are hard for me to justify one way or the other, like the fully diluted valuations. And also the relative multiples, it can be a trap too. Like, Solana may be at 100x or something for early investors, but it might still be 10x too undervalued if it truly is a threat to Ethereum and a relative threat to Ethereum versus, say, EOS. Like, I don't know, is Solana worth more than EOS yet? And I think Solana should be worth more than EOS, but it doesn't mean it is. So, like, you have to do some weird stuff to try to see what's what, and that's why I prefer to just trade the chart. What I haven't gotten in order to personally justify a Solana position is either a big enough dip or a long enough consolidation for me to participate. When I look at the weekly Solana chart or the daily Solana chart, there's just been no real dips. I tried to get the dip here from like 980 to 7 or something, and I missed it and then missed out because it went way higher. So if you get a big enough dip, it could be worth buying. I haven't gotten a big enough dip to justify buying, and I haven't gotten a consolidation to buy a breakout. And I will probably just continue to miss out until that occurs. Will I trade it when that does occur? Absolutely. Be happy to. Can't do that right now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's just the basic stuff. It's over and over again. It's supply demand. It's mean reversion. It's trend is your friend. We just say it in a different way,
Boomcat says the Sam versus CZ war will drive some great innovation, and I completely agree with that. I love competition. Like, I want the Ethereum killers to keep it up because they make Ethereum better. It's same thing with the defensibility of Bitcoin. I thought there were a lot of underhanded moves, like trying to name your Bitcoin fork Bitcoin something else is morally bankrupt to me. And same for if stuff like underhanded stuff is done against Ethereum, I don't like it, but it ends up making the defensibility of Ethereum better. It ends up challenging Ethereum to be better. And if you're not a maximalist of anything in the first place, then you just want the best network. And that's a mix of the best decentralization, the best, developer ecosystem, the best scalability solutions, whatever it ends up being the greatest blend to enable decentralized applications to run well, may it please win.
Yeah. What do you care? What does anybody care, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're a true trader, like through and through, you don't care. I want BTC to win because I believe it's a thing, but
All the
the
others,
others,
we just want to
the
win the
other,
trade.
right? Like I don't know, everything else, I could care less.
It
I
could
guess we'll
even
end.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say it could even be ADA for all I care, and I think ADA is a stupid scam that sucks.
Yeah, talk about another cult of personality. Sergey, Charles Hoskinson, like all these people, there's a risk there. The siren song of my project is the best thing since sliced bread. Everything else is crap. Not that Sergey has said. Sergey hasn't said that, to be fair, but Charlie, Chuck, it definitely has.
Charlie Chuck.
I guess we'll end on BTC because technically we didn't really talk much about it, but there was a bit of a bear div leading into that high. I'm watching 2 hour, 4 hour for bull divs. Where's that chart at? Sorry.
That's
there's
what
a bull div.
that's what always gets me when people start pointing out bear divs. Is it's like you almost always end up in a bull market with a hidden bull at the end of the day. Like it rapidly turns from bear div to hidden bull.
Yeah, this isn't hidden bull just yet. You'd want a lower low in RSI here.
Yeah.
But it's getting there for sure. And I think most people are just watching the previous all-time high. Just like, the Aave BTC chart is a great proxy for the possibilities here as far as general price action. People want to buy 40 to 42. They're nervously buying 45 to 50 right now, whatever it is. I don't know what the price is, but
yeah. I think people waiting for 41K, like perfect prior high breakout, it either, if it happens, it doesn't last very long, or we just shred right through it. It's kind of what I imagine. Yeah,
if it's support, it'll be a wick. It's not going to chill there, I don't think. So yeah, I agree. It's either going to melt like butter or just going to be there for like 2 seconds,
Yeah. On a relative basis, that's not a ton of volatility for Bitcoin. Yeah. See, what I already show that there was a divergence here. Maybe it already played out, but when I look at the 4 hour, this is a lower low on the 4 hour and a higher low on the RSI. That's a little too many candles for me, but look at that. You can even see it on the 12 hour. So here you have a lower print on the 12 hour candle and a slightly higher print on the RSI. So that's a bullish divergence there that can frequently mark a bottom and mean you have allowance to move up. It shows up on the 4 hour, 6 hour, 12 hour. It does not show up really on the daily yet. So, I mean, it may never. Like, daily RSI can do a lot of things. It's just an idea. It's just a way to look at momentum, like the shift in momentum versus price action. You don't have to take these like as some kind of gospel. Although Path on the Up Only interview we did with him, he talked about the success of the Bitcoin 4 hour as a bounce mechanism. Essentially just buy when it gets super oversold on the 4 hour and wait for it to go up. And what can happen is like what happened here is a retest of it, but that's where you can add to your long, right? You retest it, you you add a divergence to it, not just being oversold. And in the bull market, that should be a relatively decent strike rate in terms of your win percentages going for you.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll say, if we get an inverted head and shoulders on the 4 hour with a bullish Kumo breakout on the 4 hour, there's almost no better signal than a long entry signal than that. So, I'm looking for this with this cloud doing whatever cloud does.
But what's that level if it breaks above for the audio listeners? If it breaks above that, it'll probably
It's
be
like
a Kumo
40,
breakout.
51 to be
Yeah.
fair. And so this could take all of March, by the way. Like, I wouldn't expect this tomorrow.
Yeah. So the difference between where we are, 48 to 51, is 6%. So you lose out on 6%, wait till it goes above 51, and then play it to new highs. Very low risk.
Yeah, and that will likely lead us to new all-time highs.
Right. That's like 70K plus.
Yeah.
So 51 to 70K plus is a 40% gain. That risk reward ratio is really great, and you don't have to buy the bottom for that.
And if you want to be exact about it, how I'm doing it is I'm buying spot slowly, and then I'll buy leverage when we break 51.
Yeah.
That's because that way you can't get wrecked if this doesn't break out on leverage. You don't get wrecked. On spot, it's like, okay, I just keep buying lower.
Yeah, you're happy to maintain your positioning in spot, or you can DCA in at all these lower prices. As long, like, if you're happy with 40, if you're happy with 38, something like that, just keep DCAing in. But if it goes back above 51 and you haven't finished DCAing, then you can put the rest in on the 51K breakout without margin.
Yeah.
So that's how to play it with margin. Only use low margin. Don't get blown out. We keep talking about this. But even if you're not in margin, but you want to get kind of your best possible price, so your first time buying Bitcoin, your first time getting an allocation, and that's the way you could do it, in a way that you're going to average in as long as it's below the the breakout level, and then you just find, like, if the music has stopped, if it's game over, if it's a bear market now, where am I proven wrong? That's the number you have to find for yourself. Like, it's going to be relative to what did you put in. Will you wait it out for a while? What will you look for? Where will you be proven wrong? I don't know what that number is. Maybe, like, I don't know. I haven't looked at it.
Zero.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some places, just from a number standpoint, like a weekly close below 40K would be quite bearish in my mind.
I mean, if we dip dramatically and stay there, Costco is offering $16 an hour wages now, so that's pretty attractive.
A weekly low below 38, then the 20-week moving average is at 28. That's a $10,000 difference. That would be potentially worth being on the sidelines for.
Yeah, I mean, play it slow. You don't have to blow everything on some dip because you saw somebody on Twitter say this is the one, right? Like, just everybody needs to do themselves and figure out what their risk tolerance is.
Yeah, I can't tell an individual where to stop out. I'm not your financial advisor, but
right.
In terms of trying to average in a reasonable way, that's how Josh and I are trying to play this ourselves. Of course, we may not be fully coming in off of fiat. We may be looking at it in a different way, but it's the same concept.
One last thing I'll say is about CME futures. It's rollover week today, rollover day today. We're seeing a lot of open interest slosh around. We're seeing a lot of premiums decay to nothing. Again, like, if you're buying the dips on price, you're buying backwardation instead of forwardation, really, in futures as well, which is kind of the GBTC trade. I'd much rather buy it at a negative premium than a positive premium.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a decent time for people that play those trades to start easing back into futures positions because they're getting them at a discount.
Yeah. Yeah, so expect shenanigans when this stuff happens, because a lot of money has to move around. That's what I think a lot of people don't understand too. Is like, it's the expiry means the contract is closing, so you have to sell or buy or do nothing. But the contract is closing, so less people are likely to buy here, I think, based on the contract expiries. They're waiting for the open of the next contract. So I'd expect price to collapse a little bit. You expect premiums to collapse before the new contract.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these trimmers in Bitcoin and crypto are related to correlations to legacy, which are, people are getting a little nervous there too. So,
yeah,
just normal stuff. I'm not, like, freaking out. You do always want to know, like, where do you stand? Where do you take stuff off the table or not? Yada, yada, yada. But I don't feel like this is the end.
No, I agree.
Let's leave it there. Thanks so much to Matcha for being our partner for this episode. Follow Josh at Carpe Noctem on Twitter. He has great stuff on YouTube as well. Go to ledgerstatus.com/matcha to make your first trade today on a DEX if you haven't done it already. If you have done it, I know you're still doing it because it's great. We'll see you next time. Monuments crumble in the blink of an eye.